Envision, early 330 BCE, the Zagros Mountains. A road cut through stone, barely wide enough for an army to walk in single file. 3 months after destroying the largest army on earth, Alexander of Macedon marches toward the heart of Persia. Babylon has opened its gates. Susa has surrendered. Victory seems certain, but the mountains do not yield to conquest. Alexander commands roughly 17,000 veterans. Parmenion follows the longer royal road with the baggage. The king has chosen the short route through the Persian Gate, a defile so tight that his army cannot deploy. Cavalry useless, phalanx impossible. He does not yet know that the slopes above him are occupied. Above the pass waits Ariobarzanes, a Persian satrap, a veteran of Gaugamela. He has chosen this ground. Thousands of archers, spearmen, stone throwers positioned on the heights. He does not need to destroy Alexander, only to stop him. The road behind him leads to Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of the empire, the symbol of Achaemenid power. The Macedonian column stretches across the valley floor. Scouts report no movement. The slopes appear empty. Confidence grows. The front units enter the narrowest section of the pass. Then the ground begins to tremble. Boulders crash down from the cliffs. Arrows rain from both slopes. Men and horses fall where they stand. There is no room to form a shield wall, no space to return fire. The rear keeps pushing forward, unaware of the slaughter ahead. Congestion becomes a killing field. Alexander realizes the trap too late. He orders a withdrawal, but extraction under fire is nearly impossible. The Macedonians leave their dead behind, an act of deep dishonor by their own customs. For the first time in his Asian campaign, Alexander retreats. The road to Persepolis is closed. A smaller force has halted the greatest army of the age. How does a commander reverse a defeat he cannot even reach? The answer would come from the mountains themselves. Alexander does not wait. He cannot afford to. Winter approaches. Supply lines stretch thin across the Zagros. Holding position offers nothing. A direct assault would mean walking into the same death trap. He needs another way. Prisoners are interrogated. Local shepherds questioned. Somewhere in the hills above the Persian position, there is a secondary path. Unmarked, unused, dangerous. But it leads behind the enemy. A route that could turn the ambush on its head. Alexander divides his forces again. A small holding force remains in camp. Extra campfires are lit at night to suggest the full army is still there. A second detachment secures the lower part of the mountain route. Alexander himself leads the main strike in force on a long northern ascent. The climb is brutal. Frozen air, sheer inclines, ground that shifts with every step. Men lose their grip, equipment slips into ravines. But they do not stop. For 2 days they move through terrain that seems to reject human passage. Exhaustion is everywhere, but retreat is not an option. By the second night they are above the Persian rear. Below them, the enemy campfires glow, unaware of the sword hanging over their heads. The maneuver is complete. Now they must attack at dawn. One wrong move and the element of surprise is lost forever. At first light, the Holden force advances from the front. Archers exchange fire with the ridges. Persian defenders shift their attention to the pass. Exactly as planned. Then the second detachment strikes from the lower heights. The defenders now face pressure from two directions. The ridges that had been their advantage become their prison. But the decisive blow comes from above. Alexander descends from the rear heights, directly into the Persian encampment. The enemy who had dominated the pass now finds themselves surrounded. There is no room to retreat, no path to escape. The trap has been reversed. The hunter has become the hunted. Ariobarzanes attempts to break through. He fights to the last. Some accounts say he died in the pass. Others claim he escaped briefly, only to fall near Persepolis. Either way, his position is gone. The defense that had humiliated Alexander now lies in ruins. By midday, the Persian Gate is open. The road into the heart of the empire lies clear. Alexander advances toward Persepolis, the ceremonial capital, the repository of Achaemenid wealth. The city does not resist. Its governor negotiates surrender. The gates swing open without a fight. The royal treasury falls into Macedonian hands. Ancient estimates speak of vast reserves of silver and gold, wealth on a scale rarely seen in the ancient world. Alexander now controls the financial heart of Persia. The war is not over, but the empire's ability to fund resistance is shattered. Mercenaries will no longer be paid. Allies will think twice. Months later, the palaces of Persepolis burn. Sources disagree on the reason: a drunken impulse or deliberate revenge for Xerxes burning Athens. Whatever the cause, the flames signal the end of an era. The Persian Empire that had dominated the Near East for 2 centuries will never recover its former power. The smoke rises, and with it the old world disappears. Darius flees eastward. Alexander pursues, through Media, Bactria, Sogdiana. The king he chased will eventually be murdered by his own kin. There will be no decisive final battle. Only months of marching, local revolts, and the slow dissolution of Persian authority. The chase becomes its own kind of war. Alexander reaches the Indus 6 years later. He will fight Porus and his war elephants. The army will refuse to go further. But that is another story. At the Persian Gate, one narrow pass nearly stopped everything. A single mountain road where an ambush almost changed the course of history. Almost. The mountains still stand, the pass still waits. When the fighting stopped, Alexander had done what no Persian commander expected. He had turned a perfect ambush into a decisive victory. Not by meeting the enemy head-on, but by finding a path they thought did not exist. The lesson of the Persian Gate is simple. Terrain is not destiny. A narrow road can stop an army, but it cannot stop a mind that refuses to accept defeat.